Welcome back. As I mentioned before, the scenario seems to have begun in Central America, where there is some political unrest, and it has resulted in a massive strain on our immigration system. Multiple intakes from multiple points, both land and skies. However, earlier this morning, we embarked on a quick search and realized that a few news articles have started to pop up about a situation that has caught us by a little bit of surprise. On the table here today, in case you're just joining us, I have members who are representing IRCC, and I've called together leaders from Shared Services Canada to work with me in this early detection and analysis phase to determine what is happening here. A quick word to everyone that on the screen, you will see that as the titles are coming up, these reflect the individuals' titles in their daytime roles. Their titles and their characters for this particular session is listed in front of us here at the table, and I will consistently remind you of their titles. At this point, I'm getting word from our AV crew that a news report has come in suggesting that something is going on within the IRCC, and I'm going to draw everybody's attention to this first media report. Take a look at the screens.
I'm Roshan Khan with ODTN News. Social media is flooded with claims about Canada's refugee system being caught up in foreign plots. Claims that have yet to be verified but are sparking widespread public outrage towards the government. What is clear? Immigration, refugees, and Citizenship Canada confirms a nationwide technical outage but won't say more. Outside embassies and consulates, local media, and even UN observers report growing crowds, frayed nerves, and confusion. For many waiting in line, the lack of answers is only fueling uncertainty. Stay with ODTN News for further updates.
Alex, if I can come to you first, based on this initial report that we have received, is there any information from your side about an outage that we have probably missed communicating on, or are there any anomalies that you have been made aware of thus far, Alex?
This news report did catch us by surprise. Nothing on our monitoring systems are indicating an interruption, but we are having users starting to complain. So I'm imagining it's going to follow the typical workflow of opening up a support ticket on a service disruption.
At this point, I want to draw everybody's attention to there is communication going on within our Teams networks, and I'll prop this up on the screen very shortly, where it has become apparent that there is some conversation, Alex, about some outages. Now, it is early in the morning today, and at 9 a.m., I'll read out these messages and exchanges that I've been a part of with Amanda, where it says, no client-facing issues here so far. Ottawa systems are stable. And it says, good to hear, but Toronto's been getting service disruptions all evening. Some regional offices in the GTA are reporting harder impacts. And to this, we have responded, thank you for flagging. We'll keep monitoring and share updates if anything changes on our end. Jared, if I can come to you at this point of time, we've brought you into this scenario. Based on your role, are there any questions that you have and any concerns at this point from your perspective?
Yeah, first and foremost, it's scope. Coming back to, from a national or regional perspective, I think we've got some clarity in a particular region of Ontario. I would be asking for damage impact assessments at a departmental and interagency level, so that information would feed back in for a coordinated response, right? And then any clarity that we have in terms of what that outage is, if there's any hint of criminal activity, an actual cyber incident where we have to declare that, then the appropriate authorities would have to be notified as well. But since we're dealing with just a strict outage at this point in time, right, we handle it as per normal procedure, a level 1.
I think one of the things that is starting to concern me as well is that we're hearing about crowds at embassies and consulates, and there's much confusion. This may not be limited to Ottawa or Canadian borders itself. This might be happening at embassies and consulates across, especially in Central America. Is there any need for us to begin any communications or any engagements outside of our ordinary operations right now?
100%. It's about, reporting the facts that we have and also showing empathy as well, right? So our message should be very clear. It should be that there's an outage and we're currently investigating it. We don't want to cause mass panic.
I will advise my panelists as well that feel free to jump in with any questions that you may have as I set the stage. Bob, if I can come to you momentarily. I am in conversation with our SOC lead, and he is trying to work through to see what information we can get from our SIEM at this point, but I'll keep you informed. Is there anything specifically from an Arctic Wolf perspective that you think we need to be looking at right now?
Because the disruptions are happening or reported happening sometime in the evening, we'd be looking at the surrounding activity that's also going around. When did this actually start occurring? Did it occur slightly before? What kind of symptoms are these services, or the actual service disruptions? Is it a specific system portion of it, or is it a part of the network? Are the internal systems still running? We'd be running through all of that to see what kind of communications are occurring between all of those systems and reporting back to you.
Thank you. Sean, one of the things, and I'm trying to get some information on this, is I mentioned that I don't know which systems are affected right now. I'm assuming this might be our AI system. It could be a bunch of things. We have a third-party contractor. Is this a good time for me, or who should be reaching out to that contractor at this point, and what should our questions be, given that I have not been made aware thus far of any alerts from our contractor?
So the contractor in question, certainly at this point, when it comes to detection, it's about collecting as much information as possible. Think of data points or datum as pieces that are pixels that form a bigger picture. And right now, everyone is struggling to form that bigger picture. Quite often, there's tons of information in a system, as we just heard, checking the network, et cetera, but pulling all this together is what really forms an incident, detection of an incident, as opposed to a collection of alerts. Certainly understanding, getting in contact with a contractor, finding out if there's anything they know will feed into those data points.
Thank you for that, and I'm actually going to take both of you up on that, because our SOC lead, Shrey, at this point, and I believe it's going to be coming up on the screens as well, you've texted me saying that you have noticed some outbound connections. Can you help us all here in the war room understand what have you uncovered so far?
Absolutely, Ari. Considering the fact that you sent the prompt which indicated that there were outages in Toronto, that was dealt with quite effectively. And the second portion was Ottawa, which the report indicated that there were some outages today morning. However, the first thing which SOC noticed today morning was few outbound connections early in the morning. Nothing surprising, but it's a little bit anomalous. However, on the second fact, if we look at the complete networking panel, things are still up. We have not breached any baseline thresholds for system outages. We have not reported anything internally. There are some rumors that's what we're considering as best right now, but as the team or the analyst in particular, they research more, we'll keep you posted.
I just want to jump in here.
Please, Alex.
Again, I don't think the IT support team is doing the proper triage. It shouldn't be escalated to the SOC at this point. We have no indicators of compromise, and we're breaking process.
George, I'm a little alarmed by this suggestion that we are breaking process. Can you chime in with any guidance for us right now?
Yeah, in terms of what we're seeing, and Shrey has a little bit more direct access to the SIEM, if we're not seeing any actual indication that there is something that is manipulating usual behavior within the environment, or if logging is not showing that there's some kind of outage that's beyond just a functional issue, it remains an IT issue. I think Alex is very correct. You start off assuming that is an IT outage, that it is not a malicious event. You cannot adopt an approach where just because something stops working, you automatically freak out and think that you're under attack. It has to be the opposite. You have to work through a series of analysis and decisions to determine if it is most likely a probability that you are under attack or your environment has been compromised. The other thing too, unless you have like hard evidence within logs, or you're seeing straight communications from your environment to a C2 that you don't recognize, an external communicator, then you really can't say that it's an event, and you really shouldn't speak in solid terms. Harkening back to, public sector or military intelligence basics, you should never speak in complete solidity. It should always be something where you caveat it with, I reliably think, or there is a more than, I would say, what's the term I'm looking for
Agile.
caveat? Agile? No, but more like to determine certainty. Yeah, you have to determine a degree of ambiguous certainty based on how confident you are. And that confidence statement should be what advises decision makers as to the next level of actions.
Well, I'm sorry, did you mention there was outbound connections up?
Shrey, can you confirm from the SOC with these outbound connections?
Yes, there were a few outbound connections today early in the morning that we noticed. However, not surprised you've seen them before, but at this point, things are indicating differently. I don't have much information on it as of now, but I'll keep you posted as I get more data.
All right, I'm going to ask for this screen to remain on display for a while. So AV team, if you can keep this up there. Bill, I am trying to find out, and in collaboration with Alex, we're trying to figure out if we can hear back from our contractor. But anything that you want to chime in on right now based on, from a shared services perspective, based on what you're seeing?
No, I mean, as was already mentioned a couple of times, until there's defined, I guess, irrefutable evidence that we know kind of the 5 W's, right? The what, where, when, how, and then who. If we can quantify that, then there's actionable intelligence that we can move on. But until then, really, it's way too early to go out and play Chicken Little.
Okay. JF, anything from your perspective as we're gathering some of this information based on what you've heard so far? There is clearly some tension, whether this is obviously an IT outage or a security-related issue. We are investigating. Any guidance that you want to give from your position?
At this point, there's not a whole lot that can be done, obviously, on my perspective, because obviously we need to know the scope, we need to know so much information before we can go much further. So I'm going to be heavily reliant on the information I'm going to get at this point from the rest of the panel over here to be able to take a decision. But in this case here, there's no reason why I should take any action, maybe trying to figure it out, the pulse, what's going on abroad, because obviously it can have some repercussion directly driven by other countries and so on. Maybe there's something going on. Maybe there's something as well I can indicate to the rest of the team and disseminate information, well, not disseminate, sorry, but give the information to the rest of the team so we can move a little bit further. So if at this point, from my perspective here on the national cyber threat response, there's pretty much not much to do other than be very vigilant, and then maybe making sure I have my incident response plan ready to go on a national perspective, and also maybe have discussion with other agencies to make sure that there's nothing else to be aware of or to be afraid of.
And
All right.
sorry, just
Yes,
just one more thought that came to mind. I think that, as was mentioned earlier, we've got playbooks, and you've got SOC and IT are going through their decision-making process and their research. What makes this a little bit different, I believe, is that there's also national media involved, right? So from that standpoint, I'd be getting calls from other parts of the organizations and from different sources. So I think that if I'd be getting calls, and so even though the SOC and the NOC may not be prepared to determine exactly what's going on, I'd be reaching out to George and company just to say, hey, I'm getting calls. What do you know? Keep me posted. So even though it may not have been declared an incident, we may be starting the incident response just because of the external forces.
All right. There are a few questions that are starting to come in online, and Shruti, some are at you actually, but I'll come to it very shortly. I'm trying to prioritize some of this, and to folks who are messaging me directly, you can feel free to put it on the online chat as well. If you want access to it and you're here in person, you can reach out to the chat button on the CyberX site. Alex, the question is, well, there's frustration online saying, how long until we remain in this analysis paralysis? To that, obviously, we are gathering information. But Alex, there is a growing question, which is, can you explain to us in a little bit of detail, how is this service structured? Within IRCC, there seems to be a third-party contractor. Then there's shared services involved. Can you explain and help our audience understand how this service is architected?
Yeah, so CyberX Solutions is the third party that won the RFP to build out this new next generation AI system. And it is generally made to streamline the processing of immigration paperwork. However, we have had problems with CyberX Solutions before. They were part of the project of that Firebird project a few years back that I think somebody's in this room is still probably waiting on a paycheck. So it's probably centralized in a couple different data centers in this area, and then there's going to be the different regional offices, the embassies, consulates, and whatnot that'll have some computer systems and the biometric hardware that will phone home and be controlled by the central system. You know, I believe the IT support team would, at this point, be reaching out to the contractor, asking for additional support.
Alex, if I can chime in, just because I'm seeing emails going back and forth with the contractor, but I'm seeing a lot of press for answers. What do you mean by system? Does this only process paperwork that's coming in? Is it related to biometrics? Can you explain a little bit more?
No, this system was to replace a very archaic system that the government had been using for the last decade. And they did bring in AI at the last minute to make it more advanced. But it is centralized. It does take on a lot of the different functions that IRCC does do. And it's leveraging AI to streamline a lot of that paperwork handling. And a lot of it is extracting the data off of hand-filled out forms, as well as data transformation of different data sources from our industry partners.
All right, well, and Shruti and Jarrett, I might need your attention to this as well as our industry experts here. Shruti, I may come to you first, and then Jarrett. If you look at your screen right now, and those of you watching online should be able to see this as well as those in the room. I'll read bits and pieces of it. The email comes from CyberX Solutions, from Anthony Hops, and it says, and this was about 20 minutes ago, I'm just pulling it up right now. Following a thorough review of the system logs, which I don't really understand what a thorough review means in this case, we can confirm that no issues have been detected on our side. I'm unclear on what do they even mean by issues being detected. Let's just say that they're saying there's nothing wrong on their side, but the suggested action is, well, interesting. We recommend rebooting the affected client systems and to ensure they reconnect to the latest configuration, okay? And clear any temporary issues they may be encountering. And as if directly from ChatGPT, save any ongoing work, restart the client machine, verify if the issue persists after the reboot. Shruti, you've played a very big role also in guiding the kind of vendors we bring on board in the RFP process. From a planning perspective, is this raising any red flags, the response that we've got from CyberX Solutions?
It is definitely raising a lot of red flags, especially considering what Alex also shared about their history. Vendor reputation is definitely questionable here. So, and you also suggested this is probably a ChatGPT copy-paste. So this is definitely not something I would heavily rely on. I understand they're trying to push back and say there is nothing wrong. That simply doesn't mean it should not concern us. However, until like all the discussions and all the information that we have received also made me believe that it still very might be an IT issue and not yet just a cyber event. So my suggestion would be to keep checking on our end, but also keep check on the contractor side as well. Gather all the facts and information before we raise it to an event or essentially an incident, and also take actions on this contractor if we need to.
Jarrett, your perspective at this position.
So my role is strategic and operational, not technical, unfortunately. I would recommend that everybody refer to the Government of Canada Cybersecurity Event Management Plan. Refer to that. Anytime I hear the word reboot, my spidey senses tingle, right? So I would recommend checking that standard operating procedure out. And again, just Alex brought up some interesting points. I guess I'm very interested in the continuity of critical services. So basically refugee intake, those biometric verifications and border management are top of mind. But apart from that, this is a technical issue at this point, and the team should handle it accordingly.
I have a question, Ali. Just for the sake of the scenario, was CyberX Solutions granted the ability as third parties to actually implement and deploy things within production, within the government's environment?
Alex, I'm going to pass this very, very hot question over to you.
Yeah, CyberX Solutions is a critical partner in this system. So they're going to have remote access. They are still having quite a few staff in the government that are working and supporting that system in a staff augmentation role. It was a different team within CyberX Solutions that developed the code, and now it's gone into sustainment, and it's a separate team.
So we can't validate or verify at all the SDLC process in which they actually built that code. We don't know if it was secure scanned. We don't know what those personnel are doing within our production environment, and we have no visibility and control as to what this organization is doing at any level.
Yeah, Ali, did they get an authorization to operate? Do you know?
I can check, but I am going to add to this that the little information that I do have is that we have had some staff changes as well. So I'm having a little bit of challenges basically flagging this entire protocol and what has happened in the past. So I'll try to work on it, but my gut feeling is probably no.
Okay, we'll look into that as well.
For the sake of the audience, I'm only asking this because based on how the scenario is developing from a real SDLC standpoint, a lot of things have been allowed to happen that you would typically not permit in a proper SecDevOps organization. So this needs to be like highlighted as a procedural issue for big picture lessons learned.
Thank you, George. And stemming from what you have said, and Shrey, this question is coming directly to the SOC, and maybe Alex, you want to chime into this. The question comes from Steve Bowers, and that is, what is not working in the system right now? What does the outage look like specifically? Is there any additional information from the SOC perspective that has come to you from IT, or anything at all that you can shed onto this, Alex or Shrey?
Yeah, so if we zoom out for a second, how did this start? Some users were, clients were going in to do some processing, and there's a lineup forming. The queue's not getting shorter, and there's now reports that the computer systems are down, causing those issues. News reported on that quite quickly. They were likely paying attention to social media and wanting to jump on it because of the overarching scenario in various South American countries. So immigration is a very touchy issue right now. They're going to jump on it right now. But again, what we know right now is that the front line, the office, the service desk, is not able to use certain systems. And that is halting the process. The queues are growing because people are showing up for their appointments. People are showing up at the border, and things are at a standstill. So right now, again, it is at a service point, but from an IT perspective, it sounds like the tech teams local to the facilities, but also supporting the central service, are chasing their tails.
Is there any threat to public safety at this point in time?
That is a great question. So, I do believe from the media reports that people are getting a little bit restless. And there is, particularly at the embassies and consulates overseas, there would be a security issue as people are starting to line up and exceeding the capacity of the embassies and consulates. So there would be some risk there.
Alex, has any communication gone out yet on the humanitarian perspective? Because we are definitely focused on the technical aspect, but from a strategic lead point of view, I think it's also important to address that there are queues forming and there needs to be some sort of communication. We need to at least make them know what's happening and to expect the backlogs and to cooperate as well.
Yeah, and I just want to add to this, Alex, because thank you for that, Shruti. Alex, as you can now see on your screen as well, I have ascertained that there are tweets coming in as well where folks are complaining. This is, I'll just read one of them. Thanks for canceling my biometric appointment without any warning. It's like they actually enjoy making life harder for refugees, and we are seeing media chime into this as well. Bob?
One of the things that we're noticing on the tweets right now is that this also implicates Montreal as starting to occur. Alex, do you see any pattern right now in regards to what's being accessed on those areas? Is there any commonality between Toronto and Montreal?
Based off of my understanding of the system, every office, Montreal, consulates, et cetera, are going to be like the client side of this centralized service. So their desktops might be, working, other applications are working, but certain aspects of that application are starting to stop working. Back to the point on communication, this right now is still an IT operational issue and a service impact. So the government should have communication protocols that would be executed at this point, starting to reach out. Now, in reality, we've seen these situations before, and businesses, private and public, do really struggle on those initial first minutes and hours on what to communicate because they don't want to say something that's not true, the Chicken Little problem. And that's usually a failure with maintaining trust of clients and citizens and refugees in this situation. So I think that we, from the cyber side, we're not there yet to start enacting our communication protocols, but ideally IRCC is getting ahead of the narrative with their communication protocols.
Can I lean into that a little bit?
Absolutely.
So I would be tapping on JF, and I'd be asking about what the sentiment is today out in the public in terms of OSINT, right? What are we seeing in terms of, is there any misinformation, disinformation, malinformation campaigns starting to swirl? And then I would be tapping on Bill's shoulder again, is where's my damage impact assessments at the departmental level and interagency?
All right.
Prior to the comms
Prior to
going
that.
out.
I may need your assistance here, both of your assistance here. Shrey, we're getting a lot of engagement and a lot of questions that are coming in. I'm going to ask the AV team if we can have the SOC's screen come up again, and it will show up on your tablets in front of you. Thank you for setting us up this way. It gives us a good optic into all of the data that we have over here. I'm going to read this question again verbatim to you. What is the role of 192.168.1.10? Is this a legit DNS mail DB or web server? Inbound DNS from external? What is going on with that what is the role of that particular IP? SOC.
Right, so that's a very good question, Ari. And I think the first thing that we have to focus upon is facts. Number one, these are the internal IP address which I'm looking at throughout the outbound logs. Any connection which is being made at the moment is pointing me towards a lateral movement throughout Toronto till Ottawa till Montreal. Based upon the screen which you shared right now, the tweets where the biometrics are going off in Montreal, things are happening in Ottawa, and how the lateral movement is transferring data and creating outbound connections between the devices internally. I believe there is a spread of something which I can say. I'm not sure as of right now. I don't want to share misinformation in any possible way and spread rumors on top. I'll wait for my analysts and engineers to confirm and provide me some sure information about what's happening. However, throughout the logs, one thing which is for sure is there is some sense of lateral movement. It can be legitimate or it can be malicious, but as of now, that's going to be pretty much it.
Can I come in here as well?
Yeah.
Obviously, like earlier, I was talking about the fact that we need to also maybe consult our other agencies that are part of the mix. What I'm assuming as well is most of the government agencies that we have on the federal side are most likely also sending their data to CSE, and they're probably also monitoring exactly what's going on. So it'd be also very important to communicate with them and try to maybe divert their focus a bit more onto this situation. So obviously we have the SOC that is going to help us out, but also CSE can tremendously have a big impact into the assessment of that. So probably having communication with them would be key here.
Okay, Sean, one of the concerns that's starting to emerge, and as I'm receiving multiple inputs from multiple departments, is one concern which is aligning all of our communications, but that aside, in everything that we've seen so far in the outbound connections, there has been no indications of threat intelligence, indicators of compromise, nothing. Are we missing something here, or is it just too much happening, or we're pushing for too much too quickly?
Well, there's never enough information in the initial detection stages when trying to characterize a potential incident. Certainly going back to the contractor, my tech support history, my first question is always, did anything change? Did you change anything? That's going back to, is this an IT problem, or is this escalated into a security incident? We have a feeling we know which way it's going, which is increasing the alert level and expanding the communication. Also, going back to reboots are a red flag. When systems start failing, there are always logs. There are always errors. So is information also being collected from the endpoints, not just the affected endpoints, but endpoints that are also in the same network areas or at perhaps unaffected facilities out in the wild? So again, it's bringing in more information. When I start to see lateral movement, I really want to know if it is scanning across the network and what is really happening both from the perspective of the endpoints and the perspective of the network.
Thank you for that. I am, and thank you, the SOC team, for sending me your notes as well as you're doing some more investigations. I am aware you are starting to hear about more outages, so I will leave you to gathering some information. But Walter, if I can loop you in over here, we are getting some pressure from multiple partners. We are still hearing from the contractor, and I'll tell you that, and Alex, you forwarded this text to me. I'm not sure who sent it to you, but the contractor keeps saying, Alex, I believe you know somebody at CyberX Solutions, and they've said, we've checked on our side thoroughly. This is not our fault. Walter, I'm getting a push now that we need to also start aligning communications between IRCC, CBSA, and provinces and international partners. Now is the time. What do we need to be doing, and what would you need from a comms perspective from us to start initiating this process?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's the coordination of communications amongst the key stakeholders is key. And so I think what we want to do here at this stage is focus on the facts that we know and share that around. So as a comms manager in SSC, I think what my focus areas are twofold. One, given the global scope of the problem, and this is an IRCC global problem, a crisis in government, we need to get the minister and we need to get the president of SSC together and do a press conference. So I think that's first and foremost, get ahead of the messaging. Again, keep it simple, focus on what we know, that this is a technical problem, and it is causing problems for Canadians and folks who are trying to get into Canada, including the refugees. So, and reinforce the actions that are being taken. So what in fact, based on what colleagues are saying here, what are we doing from a technical, keep it simple, that there's are we isolating things, are we turning things off or whatever, that clearly an ongoing investigation is happening. I think given the fact that there's ransomware, a point to be confirmed, that indeed this is now likely a criminal matter as well, that of course we have national security agencies involved. So let's focus on admitting that the government has a problem, IRCC has a problem, it's a technical problem, and exactly what that is, that it's global in nature, and we want to make sure that media outlets, including our social media channels, are tapped into to project that messaging. And then in the background, while we're prepping the senior executives to have that communication out, that we are working feverishly in the background to coordinate amongst all the other key stakeholders, including the industry partners, and how we are messaging out. It's not a time to be pointing fingers at each other. We want, again, foremost to project calm, confidence, and competence in the government of Canada. And so we keep any of the bickering and finger pointing to a minimum and inside the tent amongst the professionals.
Calm, confidence, and competence amidst the chaos. I hear you loud and clear. Will make for a pretty social message, but I do, Shruti, want to bring you into this because, and this is tying into a conversation happening online right now. George made a very important point to the audience, indicating that something is going on here, indicating something malicious, potentially intentional from the inside or from the contractor side. But from comms, we're hearing this message of let's not point fingers. Strategically right now, is that the steps? Are you comfortable making these kind of communications, or are there still concerns that something more sinister is ongoing?
So this was brought up earlier. Do not point blame or fingers until you absolutely have certainty. And at this stage, we do not have certainty. So I absolutely agree with Walter on this. We need to remain calm and send out an aligned message without blaming anybody or pointing any fingers. It's too early. It's still very much an IT incident, and we do not have enough data to call it a cyber incident yet, let alone point any finger to our contractor. Until we know more, it has to be a general message that we are facing backlogs and issues, and until we need to focus on gathering our facts before we can conclude to any findings.
Alex, or the wider SOC team, I have to ask this, were we expecting any updates from the contractor, any work that was supposed to be happening over the weekend, overnight, anything that you were aware of?
Well, generally, the SOC's not going to engage with the contractor to support application. That's going to be IT support 100%. We are focused on detection and containment and eradication of threats when they materialize. That said, I do have a friend on the inside. I did reach out, and he did put a very ominous message of it's not our fault. I gave him 3 question marks, and I haven't got a response back yet. But given the contractual obligations CyberX Solutions is under, if they do sniff that it is a problem on their code, on their system, which could impact SLAs and result in fines, they're going to start being quite tight-lipped on us and much less collaborative.
We are also getting a question from a provincial partner, and that is, should we disconnect from IRCC before this spreads to our systems? Anyone want to chime in over here? We're getting multiple requests of this nature. There's a lot of emails flying around. There's a lot of conversations happening on Teams. Any feedback on this? Should other partners be disconnecting at this point?
Well, what's spreading?
I don't know.
We don't know. Right now, it's a operational issue. We have no indicators of compromise. We don't have any, the lateral movement could be a red herring. As much as we would love to baseline all connections and communications between our assets, unfortunately, we're just not that mature. So, applications and processes that are running on these systems do sometimes chatter, and, God forbid they left UPnP on, we're going to see that discovery communications running across the network, and that tracks with DNS.
George.
Question for yourself or Alex. Within our environment, I hope so, I hope it's the case, do we have a business continuity and disaster recovery plan? Do we have backups in place if we need to make the decision to containerize and actually shut down the IRCC environment? can we spin it back up? Because what predicates that decision is, do we have a backup that's recent enough and available enough that we can actually put it back in place so that we can maintain continuity of service? If we don't have that, then it effectively isn't an option for us, and we have to fight the hard fight against whatever either outage or malicious incident is occurring.
Well, I'm sure we do have the paper forms in the back offices and closets of all of our offices. The challenge is that we did reallocate staffing because the system was to be so next generation and revolutionary that we didn't need as many staff. So as much as we do have a failover of paper process, we likely don't have the staff to actually move the paper from one pile to the other.
I guess we're fighting then.
So on my side here, I'd like to know if there's any feedback that we've got from any other agencies at this point. So for example, maybe CSC, the cyber threat investigation or something like that, if they have any information that's coming from the outside, and if maybe the CSIS, cyber terrorism, whatever, if they've done enough, if they've seen anything that's been popping up that we haven't seen right now through a tweet or something like this that's being maybe disseminated into, I don't know, 4chan channels or whatever, right?
Well, what I can say is I'm trying to gather all of this information for you. We are now getting live shots, which will pop up on my screen as well. At the border now, waiting times have started to increase as well. And you can see the timestamps there, 9 a.m. to 10:20 a.m., and there hasn't been any movement. And I am very, very concerned, Shruti and public safety as well, that something is going on here. I'm trying to consolidate all of the technical notes. Very quickly, I do see a hand up. If you want to shout out your question, please. Got it. All right, what credentials are in play by the AI system? We will come to that. AV team, I'm getting interrupted by Shrey here and the SOC team that they have an important update to share with us. Can we switch over to their screen? And Shrey, if you want to go ahead, and then maybe Alex, please.
Absolutely, Ali. Unfortunately, it's not a nice and good news that I come with right now. It seems that one of the workstations just gave this screenshot at the moment, and it appears there is a ransomware breach in some form and shape. We are not aware of what the spread is looking like at the moment. However, we are looking into it. A couple of workstations who have already been noticing the same thing have already been isolated, so we are trying to do as much as we can. However, it seems we are losing control minute by minute.
Well,
Go ahead.
you know, during the detection and analysis phase, it is really hard to know when you have an incident. As much as all the magic security tooling that we have would result in a red flashing light suggesting that we're breached, a lot of times it is very challenging to actually determine, because we have both the saturation of information, but we also have absence of information that we're both dealing with to try to determine, do we have enough indicators of compromise, the totality of it, to actually declare the incident and then start going through those procedures, except for when it's ransomware.
Bob.
And this gives us a very good indicator of unauthorized software at a minimum, but likely that a cyber attack with this splash screen.
At this stage, is there any additional information that's coming from the scene prior to the ransomware actually occurring? Was there any additional items that fired off from mysterious processes that are against the baseline? Did any of the EDR systems display, oh, this was an unusual process command run? Anything like that that we were able to pull from the local scene?
I'm going to get the SIM team to start doing some threat hunting. Now that we have an understanding that one of the central servers to this system has been compromised and looks like one of the most expensive ransomwares I've ever seen, we now know the thread to start pulling on. That was the challenge that we had before, is, you know, we're doing a terabyte of logs a day, and trying to pull a thread without much makes it very challenging. So right now, we do have a system that we can start looking at and likely start recognizing that that lateral movement may have actually been propagation to other systems.
And to add on top of that, and to address actually the same question, From the infected devices, we did extract the logs. It can include the change logs, the activity logs, how much the utilization was for each and individual devices, what was happening prior to looking at this particular screen. Turns out there is no such suspicious activities, which points us into the direction of something internal has happened. This is one of the regional intake terminals which is displaying this at the moment. I'll keep you posted as I have more information on it, but as I said, I want to deal with facts. I don't want to spread any wrong information at the moment.
Does that information also include integrity monitoring, even if it hasn't yet, even if those signals were not previously considered suspicious or indeed malicious, going back and seeing what indeed changed right before this ultimate expression of the incident occurred from those systems, because, and I believe that's what you were going after. Quite often they're weak signals which do not rise to the level of suspicion, but in investigating, all of those signals suddenly become very important in order to create indicators of compromise, which could be used internally and pushed out to start identifying, is there still lateral movement, et cetera.
I also just want to, I see another hand in the crowd. If you want to shout out your question.
What evidence is there that that's an actual system compromise and not a desktop or web pop-up?
And I actually touched on that, saying like there's unauthorized software at a minimum that could be, you know, pretend ransomware. So we want to start looking into it, and we're going to start triggering remote management of that system, starting to, you know, get the EDR agent to start pulling some telemetry for us, likely, and we need to start talking about the containment actions. But first, let's be clear here. We have declared an incident at this point because of a fairly good signal that can be combined with a lot of this weaker signals of service interruption and impacts to IRCC. So it will be, you know, multi-pronged at this point. We do need to have the technical teams focusing on the technical investigation to understand scope, and then internally and more strategically, we need to start looking at understanding all systems and services impacted, and start prioritizing what we need to do, both from a technical perspective, but also from the operations of IRCC around the world.
So Alex, clearly we're not a level 1, a low severity anymore.
Nope.
We're somewhere stuck, I would assume, between level 2, which is a limited government Canada-wide incident, or a comprehensive government-wide incident involving, you know, serious or medium injury to individuals or groups of individuals. And naturally, a level 2 and a level 3 will trigger different functions, right? It will trigger the event team or the management team, right? Or both. Where are we at this point? You know, is that a question for Bill with your damage impact assessments? Do we have a readout on that?
So yeah, no, at this point we don't have, I haven't received enough information to be able to put one together. I think that one of the first things that I've communicated back to SOC and the technical folks is one around containment. It's clear that, well, at least one workstation is compromised and is ransomed. So what can we do to isolate that? And so I've sent those questions off. Once we get those sorts of answers, then the damage impact assessments and the rest of it can be put together.
Okay, thank you. At this point, though, given that we are dealing with a real cyber incident, and of criminal nature, the authorities would have to be contacted. The department would have to contact the RCMP immediately.
Yep, and I just want to bring forward one other point. Now that we are in a level 2 situation, and we also got clarification from Shay that it would probably be an internal compromise rather than the indications are showing it's not external, We want to keep tabs on that contractor situation. We have made several attempts to have a conversation with them, but we need to kind of press on that and actually figure out how to reach out to them and have an actual understanding of what has happened, what kind of access they still got, if they got any, what kind of reports. George brought up SDLC and what exactly has happened. It's time we kind of put that out in the open and start investigating a little bit.
The bigger thing too is from a shared services standpoint, since this is an IRCC issue, we have to determine now in our SOC where are the dependent processes that are occurring. So we have to figure out like where business process is going to be hampered by this outage, and then where are the immediate spreads, right? Because those organizations are now going to have to be immediately reached out to internally, bearing in mind that everything I'm doing at my level is not public facing. I'm out here trying to talk to technical leads at various other departments, trying to figure out, hey, are your systems still online? Are you seeing anything? This is what's occurring right now. We need to now be prepared to bring down everything to put it back up if the infection spreads beyond the localized point that we can confirm now.
And maybe to address some of the adjacent partners, they were concerned about disconnecting, but at that time it was premature, right? It was going to probably cause more harm than good by interrupting their other services. But at this point, we do have some concerns of lateral movement, and we want to contain that within IRCC, but given all the interconnectivity between different partners, it probably is good to start understanding those and start making decisions of what we can do to contain.
Thank you, Alex. Just very quickly, we have about 2 minutes left to wrap up this module. Coming up on my screen now, and I think this is going to be very important as we move into containment. Coming up on your screens right now, you can see, and for those that have access, you can probably read this whole article on ODTN News. Canadians are basically reporting passport scanning chaos at European airports. And at this point, to everybody at the table, I am going to say that everything that has been happening over the weekend within the EU as well at the airports is now starting to raise quite a lot of concern within federal, provincial, and municipal parties at this point. If I can very quickly turn to both Sean and then to my friend Bob from Arctic Wolf. Sean, there is a concern also that's coming in online that we have yet to identify the scope of the disruption. Is this a concern for you at this point, or do you see this as something that will sort of come up when we go into the module on containment?
I think at this point, characterizing the scope needs to be started, absolutely. It's really what will feed containment. Containment is always a careful balance between unplugging the internet connection, if you will, pulling out the wire cutters, and isolating certain parts of the network or aspects of the network, certain applications, et cetera, which is a bit more using a scalpel instead of a sledgehammer. So certainly characterizing that scope is absolutely 100% necessary. And something that I'll point out, zooming back from the scenario a little bit as a vendor, there's a lot of expertise at this table. There's a lot of wherewithal, there are a lot of systems being engaged. For a lot of mid-sophistication customers, commercial folks out there, mid-enterprise, the first indicator that they have, unfortunately, that there's something wrong is that ransomware note. So this is a tremendous problem, and centralizing that information is very difficult on a small budget, if you will. Just the people to use those tools are sometimes more expensive than the tools themselves. And I'm sure you see the same thing out there in the wild all the time.
Last word to you, Bob.
Yeah, we certainly do. So just to echo Sean's point here, the scope, like declaring what we're actually seeing, because now we have that true compromise indicator from Alex's team showing that we can begin really giving those indicators over to our partner organizations outside of the IRC. and utilizing that as a part of what we're now able to look for. Now, I know it's a little bit late in the game on the ransom side of things. However, it will indicate that we're seeing this from multiple, potentially multiple areas by potentially the same threat actor. So that also gives us a good indication of other things to look for. There may be additional data sets that we can pull from our partner organizations if they're starting to see some of the same things.
And related to that, as soon as some sort of sample or indicators of compromise can be nailed down, working with a trusted vendor can be very important, because quite often we have a global view across systems, both government and commercial, that's perhaps in some ways a little bit broader. And we can take that information and start looking through our systems to see if we've seen something similar out there in the wild, or if this is related to something similar that we've seen out there in the wild.
Thank you very much. As we are getting more information at this point, as I bring Module 1 to a close, I want to thank this War Room for coming together. If you cannot see it, you cannot stop it. I am grateful for the telemetry that has been brought together very quickly, but the need to inquire deeper will become very apparent as we move into the next module. For those that are watching online, you will also see that I have received all of your questions that I'm trying to respond back. We have released a poll as well. Please try to respond to that poll, because at the end of this session, at the end of Operation Defend the North, we will make sure to compile all of those suggestions and put together a white paper explaining the scenario and incorporating your feedback. Not only do I want to thank all of my advisors for their time and their energy in this scenario, I want to give a shout out to both Bitdefender as well as Arctic Wolf for coming on board as partners and assisting us at this very critical time. The time right now is approximately 10:25 a.m. We will be back at 10:55 a.m. with the containment module as this scenario begins to grow beyond Canadian borders. Thank you very much.